Okay. Hi, Ann. How are you?
Hi, Doug.
How you doing? Nice to see you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I love your show, and I can't wait to post this on all my social media.
Oh, well, great. We're happy about that. So, I was looking at your bio. Are you what we would call a life coach?
Um, I would say when I was entering the industry many years ago, I was a life coach for a while. I think it's evolved significantly now to business coaching and consulting. So I still do what I can consider more comprehensive coaching. I call it strategic living coaching. So if you want to call that life coaching, but I work with a lot of corporate professionals and entrepreneurs who want that coaching on a regular basis that kind of encompasses their life and the business as part of their life. So it's a kind of a combination of the two.
So, you work primarily with corporations rather than with individuals privately?
Still individuals. I'm doing some training and consulting for corporations, and sometimes I'll get referred in-house referrals from them. But for the most part, it's individuals, a lot of repeat and referral customers and clients, and always growing. And I limit it too. I think quality is more important than quantity. So you only take on so many at a time because I have a lot of other parts of my brand as well.
Okay, where did all this come from? Because I don't remember any of this when I was a kid. Looking at you, I'm probably a good deal older than you are, but this seems to be a phenomenon of the 80s, maybe it started.
I think maybe 80s. I think a lot of that was like fitness coaching. And then the 90s was really when coaching as an industry was born, because I know most of the coaching certifications and training institutes who are only been around for, 20, 25 years. So yeah, it's definitely a more modern evolution. And I think there's several reasons for that. I think one, we've become in many ways a more disjointed society. We don't have that social space where we open our hearts to our friends. If anything, in some weird ways, we've become more private about the things that matter and more vocal about the things that don't on social media to some extent. So I think people started to realize that it's kind of like you might not always find the perfect mentor, but you could pay a coach to serve a lot of those similar purposes, whether that's just your life or your business.
You know, that's a very good point because back in the day, if you had trouble, if you had anxieties or things, you would go to your friend, your confidant, and have a nice long talk and work things out, and they would try to give you advice, or you could go to your parents or whoever, right? And you're
Absolutely.
right, people don't do that anymore. Families are very disconnected. People live across the country from each other. And yet, the irony of social media that's supposed to bring us together has actually split us up in some ways.
It's so true. It's so true. Such a strange, and I can't wait to, I love history. Just, if we can look back on this in 50 or 100 years to see where this evolution ends and how it affects our emotional wellness. Um, I think also emotional wellness is a part of why the coaching as an industry has become so popular because I think it was a nice transition during a time, 90s and early 2000s, where clinical treatment was a little less comfortable for people. They were less likely to take their personal problems, their marriage problems, their professional doubts to a therapist. They didn't feel like they were ill or in some, but they were like, I just want to talk to someone who's a professional and has been trained. I don't really need therapy, but I need motivation, encouragement. I really need what we call a lot in coaching a thought partner to kind of help me, a team member who kind of helps me wrestle through these and then make my own decisions, but with some input.
I often wonder if this is going to get better because you said I'd like to see what this looks like. And with technology booming so quickly and AI just around the corner, I don't see this as getting better. I really don't. Maybe I'm the pessimist, but I think it's going to get worse before it gets better because people just haven't kept up with it. Technology has happened so fast, we haven't
Yeah.
had time to digest it all yet, emotionally and mentally digest it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's such a catch-22. I definitely believe there'll be a huge evolution in how it sort of finds its niche and lasting place in our lives. There's also an interesting trend too, though, right now, where even though we're almost entirely virtual as we are at this moment and social media driven, that because so many people now, after COVID and everything else, are working from home, and some of them are going to stay working from home, a lot more remote jobs in general. I teach a lot about work-life integration. That there's going to be a trend that people are going to start getting more involved in their communities again at the local level, and often moving out into smaller cities, sometimes smaller towns as well. So when all of their social, a lot of their social engagement was happening at their local clubs and churches and all these things, that can still happen. But what they're going to see less of is that corporate, like, oh, I only go to drinks with my corporate friends from the office, and people kind of returning to a community level, which I think is a good thing,
That
because
is,
I
yeah.
think there is more support at the community level.
Yeah, that is a good thing, and hopefully that might happen. But
We'll cross our fingers, right?
yeah, but if people start, this is going to be like almost a repeat of the 1950s, where it was the suburban flight out of the cities, which was the spawn of the suburbs, right?
Right.
Now
Yeah. Very
with
similar.
right with virtual, because we can work from anywhere. If your choice is to live in the city or live in the suburbs or in the country, I think a lot of people would take the country. Some people like the city life, but I think some people, especially when they start having kids, they feel it's a better place to raise their children away from the city.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, it'll be interesting. All right.
It sure will.
So,
Yeah.
aside from that, you've also got a book out. Your book is called Live for
Yeah.
Joy. Is this your first
Yeah.
book, or how many have you written?
Yeah, this is my first published book. I've been writing my entire life, but it's mostly, articles and not a published book. So this is my first published book. It's a personal empowerment experience, is actually what I call it. It's a unique as a book in the sense that I wanted content that was poignant writing, but also a book that was visually thought provoking and inspiring. So this book is unique in that way because it contains small, really concentrated doses of personal empowerment, motivation, and inspiration, opposite pages of fantastic art and photography. Of course, all the content is written by me, but it's basically 12 chapters with 12 ways to inspire your self-awareness and a mindset for really living in your best self. It's a great bedside table, coffee table book. I wanted to write a book that was a personal empowerment book that didn't take a lot of time to read, to have food for thought. So I designed it, if you could pick it up for 1 or 2 minutes, you should have enough food for thought that sometimes you would get from a page or a whole chapter of another book.
Okay, let's define personal empowerment, because I've heard that term used quite a bit. What does that mean? To you, what is the definition of that?
I think in the most simplest terms, it's really about mindset and authenticity. And as an emotional wellness specialist, I would say that probably one of our biggest challenges is just really authentically being ourselves, living ourselves, being proud of who we are, not trying to pretend we're someone else. And then mindset, which there's a whole chapter in the book just on perspective alone, because mindset really has so much to do with how we see ourselves, how we value ourselves. And by personal empowerment, do you feel confident in your life? Are you confident, content, energized to live your best experience? To live strategically, in my book, is a measure of personal empowerment, as opposed to living just passively as a victim of circumstances.
Do you think that's the primary issue with most people, is lack of self-confidence that keeps them down, for lack of a better word, and not achieving
I
their
think
full
so.
potential? Yeah.
I think so, but it's different kinds of self-confidence, right? Because we all know that often, and I love entertaining people, but sometimes the biggest clown in the room also can be someone who has kind of can not always have self-esteem issues, and it's kind of an overcompensation. So personal empowerment is more about how you feel on the inside, literally, than how other people perceive you on the outside. So I'd say we have many even leaders that are very confident on the outside, but they could still be very shy on the inside. And earlier in my career, I was involved in entertainment and acting industry. And I found it fascinating. And you read these, you've interviewed these people. So many stars, film stars, movie stars, are kind of shy, reticent people who sometimes still struggle with their own self-confidence, and they're famous. So even those people can sometimes use personal empowerment.
Oh, absolutely. And having studied acting and worked in music, it's a front really for a lot of us, and
It
I
is.
include myself in that
Me too.
because when you get out on stage, you can pretend to be somebody else, and even if it's
Absolutely.
for me, oh, I'm the piano player. I'm not Douglas anymore. I'm the piano player, or I'm the singer, or whatever. But it's a way of kind of protecting yourself because people see that image on the stage and they applaud and they woo, and it makes you feel good. Uh, it's a tickle for your ego, but it doesn't necessarily help your self confidence any when you get back to the dressing room. You might feel good for a while, but it's like
Right.
a drug. It
You
sort
have
of
to
wears
hide
off.
for an hour.
Yeah, yeah. So it's very interesting. But yeah, people in the arts, particularly in the performing arts, I've seen that over and
Oh
over again.
yeah. Oh yeah, because I think it's, being in the spotlight is can be enormously draining, and it's enormous physical and emotional toll for a lot of people. And it's ironic that being an artist is usually means that most people are more feeling and sensitive or even empathic type people. So they're going to take the hits harder. They're going to take everything is kind of accentuated. And personal empowerment can get kind of lost along the way. So, yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's true. And in fact, the highs are higher, the lows are lower with a lot of
Yep,
performers, as opposed
absolutely.
to, and I don't want to single out accountants, but people who do a very people who do a very left brain kind of job tend to have a more stable life, uh, at least in their working environment. Because
Right.
working in the industry, in the entertainment industry, is anything but stable.
Not
That's for
stable.
sure.
It's like these industries take people who are literally tough as nails to make it work in the industry, but soft and empathetic enough to be true artists. So yeah, it's a real conflict of
It
types and
is.
interests in a certain way.
It is. And I think the best example I can come up with is the music artist versus the A&R person at the record label. Because
Yes.
all they see is dollars and cents, the A&R.
Yep.
And they are just the accountant right to the core. And there's always the conflict between them and the music artist. Elton John said that the people who had the most power in the music industry are the ones that know the least about music. And it was so true. So true.
Absolutely. Yeah, the
Yeah.
decision makers, the people at the top with the big bucks. Yeah, it's a strange world that we live in where art is viewed that way, and it's so competitive now. In history, we didn't have most people didn't have the luxury of being artists for a career. That's more of a recent phenomenon. And, in like the 17, 18, 19, 1800s, most of those people who made it as artists, they had sponsors from the rich and famous. And now
Right.
it's like you don't get a sponsor or until you are rich and famous, basically. So it's a very strange evolution where our art has taken us, art and music, in the last 100 years.
Well, and the internet has done a double edged sword job on the entertainment industry, which I don't want to get into now because that's a 20-minute conversation. All right, let me ask you just one thing, just a little about your work. So, if a company comes to you, they hire you, what exactly do you do? Do you go in and give like a TED talk, a presentation, or do you work with the executives or the employees kind of in small groups, or how do you do it?
Sure. So yeah, often the first introduction would be a keynote or a themed presentation to a group. And then after that, often, we would be talking to leadership. I have a lot of experience in masterminding and bringing in, the emotional wellness, work life integration pieces together So that can be kind of a small group effort, whether that's a seminar, a single seminar. Then sometimes, the goal is that it trickles down to bringing in training around emotional wellness and empowerment for lower management and employees. And then sometimes as well, we might finish up by having some of the, VPs or others who want to do basically the one-on-one strategic sessions. So personal coaching for them as a complete person, both as a professional and as a person in their real life. Because I don't believe you can separate the two. That's why I don't talk about work-life balance. I talk about work-life integration, because we just were kind of kidding ourselves all those years. Well, there's work in the home, work at work, and home at home. Still, we're still one person, and who we are at home is representative of how we experience our job, and how we are at work is representative of what's going on in our personal life. So to me, it's really about addressing the whole person, in a variety of ways.
I like that idea better, because you're right. As much as you try not to bring work home, it comes home with you anyways.
Right.
It certainly
Right.
does. Yeah.
Because we all know we lay awake at night thinking about work, and at work we're, even wherever we're working, even if we're thinking about, this argument we had with someone this morning, or so we are the same person. So I think kind of bringing that to terms and to peace, and it's such a valuable investment for business, because a happy person is most likely to be a happy employee, and vice versa. And you're going to have less employee attrition and lots of other issues in an unhealthy corporate environment that's not really taking care of the whole person. And people have learned that in the last 10 to 15, 20 years from a physical wellness point of view. But I think they're just now, and COVID has been a big part of that, really starting to recognize its validity from an emotional wellness point of view too.
Yeah, I think so. And I've talked to other people who do similar work that you do, and I think the days of the dictator CEO are long gone, or is disappearing fast. It becomes such a toxic work environment for everybody that everyone's miserable, and then productivity suffers as a result of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we do have to wind this down. I think on that note, that's a good note to go out on. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Yes, absolutely. So you can find out more about me on my website, which is annscottlin.com. That's Ann with an E, Scottlin, Scowtlin, annscottlin.com. You can find out more about my book there, or my book URL, which is liveforjoybook.com. And check me out on social media at Ann Scottlin on all the platforms.
Thank you for coming on the show. This was nice talking to you. Nice meeting you. Best of luck with your premiere book.